Another way to deal with error messages and to hide them is to nest functions within functions. That might sound a little bit confusing, but let's walk through the process together. In this instance, you'll see that I have one column that has been kind of blanked out. Now, it still has a VLOOKUP in it, but in this instance, the VLOOKUP is nested in what's called an IFERROR function. And the way the IFERROR function works is it basically says that if the VLOOKUP works, put in the results of the VLOOKUP, but if there's an error, put in an empty space, and that is what's signified by these two sets of quotation marks. There's a little empty space in there. You don't have to put in the space, it just assumes there's a space there if you put in the two question marks together. So if I want to go and use this if error, what I do is I go ahead and I start with a function that works up top, and so far this is working perfectly well. I go up into the formula bar and I click between the equal sign and the VLOOKUP function. I type in if error and an opening parenthesis. I click at the end of the function, I put in a comma and two sets of quotation marks and a closing parenthesis, because in all of these functions you have to have an equal number of opening and closing parentheses. So I'm taking a look, 1, 2 opening ones. I'd better make sure that I have 2 closing ones on the end. Now if I go ahead and I tap my enter key, and in this case I miscounted, which is great, because in this instance, Excel steps in and goes, no, I think you got that wrong. I think you meant to write this part. And if that looks good, and 99 times out of 100, that's exactly what it should be, I go, yeah, I want to accept this correction. Now you won't see a difference here because it was functioning perfectly well, and the ID number is causing the VLOOKUP to work. But now what you're going to find is that if you click on this cell and grab the fill handle and pull down, you're still copying the VLOOKUP, but you're copying it nested in the IFERROR function. So if I come along here and I type in another product number, you'll see that it fills it in perfectly well. It does fill this in, but let's take a step back. If I get rid of the ID number and tap my enter key, rather than getting error messages here, I don't get them in these cells anymore. So to complete the process, I would still click up here and do the same thing. I would nest this VLOOKUP in an if error as well. And this time around, I'm fully aware that I've got a balance of parentheses. So if I tap my enter key, too few arguments for the function. Once again, this is where the formula bar works out really well. I'm going to click OK because the problem is I inadvertently put in this symbol. Replace it with a comma. And away we go. So it's nice that Excel always steps in and tries to help you out if things are going a little bit sideways. If I tap my enter key, it works just as it did before, but now if I click on that, grab the fill handle and pull down, all of these error messages are hidden until I come on in, I drop in, and I need ID number to be looked up. And then I can just complete the number purchased. And I also have to make sure to pull this function down as well. And if I decide to go ahead and pull this function down further, well, same idea. I could come along and encase this in an if error as well. So in that instance, I have all of the error messages hidden. I don't have anything here in these cells, so even if I typed in an ID number, that wouldn't amount to a hill of beans, so I'm just going to take those out. I'll delete them out. But from here on in, if I go, put in the ID, it fills it in, and now all I have to do is type in the number that was purchased, and it calculates the total.